Hello, everybody! Thank you for joining us for FFG Live on YouTube. Yeah, YouTube. I'm Josh Massey, and I'm joined today by Tony Fanchi.
Hey, everybody.
So, Tony, you've been working on a game for a while.
Yes.
What's this game?
This game is Unfathomable.
Unfathomable.
Yes. It cannot be fathomed.
Yes, it is without fathom, even. And it is a mouthful. So, tell us a little bit about your experience with Unfathomable. How long have you been working on it? Has it just been you?
So it's any game we make is certainly a collaboration between a lot of people. But on the design side, I have been leading up the design effort based on a design of a previous game we published back in 2008, the Battlestar Galactica board game by Corey Knitska. But this game is, I like to think of it as a spiritual successor to that game.
Okay, awesome. And you've been working on it for how long now?
Well, I haven't been working on it since about November of last year.
Okay, yeah, that's fair.
That's when my part of the design was finished. But at that point, it had been almost exactly a year since I had started working on it.
Very cool. So not like our last stream where Nathan, I think he was measuring in children born.
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Not quite that intense. Cool. Well, thank you for joining us. I'm very excited to be able to talk to you a little bit more about it and get some questions answered from our community. But just so everybody watching the stream is aware, we are going to do a couple things today. We're going to do an unboxing. We're going to show off some of the cool stuff that you get with Unfathomable. And then we're going to do a Q&A session because I don't often have Tony sitting across the table from me. I got to use this. So that's what we're going to do. And I think we're just ready to jump right into it, right?
Let's do it.
All right, let's do it. So we have a game.
Yes.
And
this is the first time I'm seeing this box in person.
Ooh, I like that. I would say the same, but the one that brought it here today.
Yeah.
So I've seen it in person. So you haven't seen it yet?
No.
Isn't that weird? Is it normally like that?
Well, I mean, we usually get production samples.
Right.
The producer on the game, Molly Glover, is the one who took a look at it. Things were a little bit weird this time around because of the whole pandemic thing.
Okay, yeah,
but I've seen pictures of everything inside the box, just never anything in physical form.
All right, well then this is even more exciting.
Yeah.
We all get to experience for the first time? All right, so we've got a box. We've got some rules. Rules are good to have in a game. But we're not going to talk about them today. We can't give all of that away yet. Learn to play, also very good. We've got some ads, and we've got some punch. It looks like a couple of little punch pieces fall out. That happens every single time I open a new game. So we'll get into the punch in a little bit. This thing, however, is intense.
It's a massive board.
So I'm going to bust this thing open. Let's move these out of the way for a sec. So I did, okay, I see what you're doing here. I'm picking up what you're putting down.
So for the fans at home, this is called the pants fold.
I like that. I have not heard it called that before. So this board is massive.
Yeah.
Luckily, I have a very large table at home.
If I do say so myself.
Yes. So I never played BSG. I never played that game. I heard only amazing things. Wish that I had. What is this? Is that normal for a game like this?
That's something that was kind of unique to BSG. I don't know that I've seen it in other games, but we have dials built into the board. So when we were thinking about the iconic things about the predecessor of this game, one of the things that everybody brought to mind was the fact that these dials were built into the board.
Nope. I just launched that. All right. Yeah.
And so over the course of the game, you're going to be tracking the ship-wide resources here on the board. So these are shared resources between everyone in the game on the ship. And if any of those drops down to 0, then the humans lose. The ship fails to reach its destination.
Interesting. Okay. I really wish I had gotten in on a playtest of this game. That's beside the point. Okay. So that's really cool. So it has dials built right into the board.
Yep.
So I don't have to have separate tiles sitting around my table like I do for every other game I enjoy playing. So that's super exciting. This board is just massive.
It is.
I'm sure we'll be talking about what a lot of the other bits and pieces are. We'll move that out of the way for now as we get into that. So obviously, I mean, it wouldn't be an FFG game without punch board.
Yeah, and
Right.
as our games go, this one's relatively light on the punch.
There's one sheet.
Yeah.
Just one. That's impressive. Good work. And then, punch board, we know that we have standees for characters. And I'm actually going to talk about one of the questions now because people can see the standees. One of the questions that we had that was asked, I think, by a few different people was, are there just 6 playable characters because it's a game for 3 to 6 people? Clearly,
Yes.
there are more than 6. Let's see if I can count. I can count by 2s even. There are 10.
Yes, very, very good.
Yes.
And those 10 characters are split 5 crew members of the SS Atlantica, which is the name of the ship that you're traveling on, and the other 5 are all passengers who somehow get thrust into the action of the game.
Okay. Somehow get thrust in, like maybe they're a hybrid.
Maybe, maybe not.
Maybe they thrust. Well, I mean, maybe.
It all
maybe not.
depends
Right,
on how the cards are dealt.
Exactly. Okay. Okay. Very cool. So 10 playable characters. So even if I have played the game once, twice, maybe 3 times, there are still opportunities for me to take a different character with different abilities, and so
Exactly.
replayability, that adds a lot.
Yes,
Rather than
and
just having 6. And
Another huge factor in replayability is who happens to be the traitors in the game. Because whether the captain is the traitor, or the keeper of the tome, which is a new title introduced in this
Okay.
game, or whether the ship's stowaway happens to be the traitor, all of these are going to make the game a little bit different because you're going to lose out on that character's skill set because they're going to be working against you, which you may or may not know.
So if the captain happens to be the traitor/hybrid,
That's bad news.
wouldn't it be really easy to just say, you know what, I'm sinking the ship, we're done?
Not quite that
Okay,
easy.
okay,
Not
okay,
quite.
good. I'm glad that you thought about that in the design process.
Yeah, because if the captain comes out and is clearly bad, people are not going to follow that captain.
That's
very
fair.
long.
That's fair. There may be a mutiny.
There's gonna be a
yeah,
mutiny,
Yeah.
yep.
Okay. Okay. That's fair. That's fair. All right. Cool. So 10 characters, huge board. We've got some other stuff. We don't need to talk about that. I mean, you stand characters up in the standees, right? Actually,
And your dial connectors for your board.
right. What's this?
Those are traitor rings. So if a person reveals themselves as a traitor, you put one of these rings on their standee so that everybody can remember and note where that character is on the board, that that's a traitor there. Because one of the important things about revealing as a traitor is you become a target for the human players. You can be attacked directly, which is something that is much different in this game than its predecessor, BSG. Characters who reveal themselves to be traitors remain on the board, and they're running around the ship, and the other players have to deal with that.
Okay. So, question. If you think somebody's a traitor/hybrid, you can't attack them until
Right.
they have officially revealed in some way, shape, or form that they are.
Yeah, yeah.
Interesting.
What you have to do in that case is you have to go to the captain's cabin to convince the other players that this person is no good and we should throw them into the brig.
Okay. Interesting. So to avoid being thrown into the brig, somebody could potentially announce themselves and, start running away?
You can't avoid
If you've given away too much information, maybe?
you can't avoid the brig
Okay,
except
okay.
by revealing yourself to be a traitor, which
Got
you
it.
can only do during your turn.
Okay. I'm learning a lot. So thank you.
Yes.
And you're welcome, everybody else. All right. We've got characters. We're not going to talk a lot about the characters. Reason for that is we've got an article coming out in about a month's time where we are going to be discussing all of these characters, and we don't want to give too much away. So we will talk about Keilani. Keilani is the captain.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about Keilani that I wouldn't know about Keilani.
Well, Keilani is a veteran sailor. She's been sailing the seas for all of her adult life. And in her previous ship experience as a leader on a ship, she actually suffered a mutiny from her crew.
Jeez. Okay.
So she was the first officer, the first mate of the ship, when it was hit by a storm that took out the captain and several other crew members. So obviously, when the captain's gone, the first mate steps up and takes charge. But a lot of her crew didn't like that. They didn't like taking orders from a woman. And so they were off the ship with her. She was put adrift in a lifeboat with all the other crew members who were willing to follow her. And while she managed to get her crew who had stayed with her rescued, the rest of the ship was lost at sea and never seen again.
So, despite the fact that she wasn't on a much larger ship, she was still able to keep her crew safe because she's awesome.
Yes.
Basically. Okay. I like that. I like Keilani. I'm going to play Keilani. But, if she happens to be a hybrid, that could be two mutinies.
That could be, yes.
That's not good for her career, being, a deep one. All right, there are some other cards in here. I'll just, without giving too much away, we'll put this up just briefly. What are these all about?
We have a few reference sheets.
Okay.
So this sheet here is one that everybody starts the game with. On this side of the sheet, you can see a layout of the ship, the interior of the ship. So the inside of the ship, there are 8 spaces. 2 of those are the sick bay and the brig. The sick bay is where you go when you get hurt. The brig is where you go when other people don't like you.
Yep, it's fair.
And then the other 6 spaces all have their own ability built into them. And if you are a person in one of those spaces, you can take the action on that space to perform that ability.
Okay, cool. So that's a freebie. I get that when I start the game. Mm-hmm. All right, I am going to open this up. I'm going to show off the first one and let you talk about it while you're multitasking and looking through and finding a couple other cool things for me to pick, because I don't know which of these cards are cool. But I do know that you mentioned the Keeper of the Tome.
Yes. So the Keeper of the Tome, the story around Atlantica is that the inciting incident for the action in the game is the murder of one of the passengers in the ship's chapel.
Okay.
And that passenger, when she was killed, happened to have been performing some kind of ritual in the chapel. Now, the crew may not know exactly what that was, but she left behind this ancient tome that was in her possession. And this tome is full of spells and other mystical learnings. And so the Keeper of the Tome is the person who has possession of that spell book during the game. And this is a title like Captain that can be passed from player to player, but there is on the back of this card, there is a list of the characters and the order in which they are given the title of Keeper of the Tome.
I'm not going to give that information away, so I'm making sure to hide the back of the card with my hand, which they wouldn't be able to see through anyways. Mm-hmm. Interesting. All right. And you mentioned the captain. Do we want to give that away yet?
We can take a look at the captain.
Can we talk about the captain?
Sure,
okay. Because you just mentioned that there is the captain title as well.
Yes, so the captain title, the primary purpose of the captain, there are actually 2 of them. The first one is that the captain gets to choose what destinations the ship travels to each time the travel marker reaches the arrive space on the board.
Okay.
That is a critical decision because the captain gets to decide how fast the ship gets to its destination in Boston, and also what kind of encounters they have on the way. Okay. The other thing that the captain often does is make decisions on crisis cards, on mythos cards, excuse me. So for instance, we have the power of the people here, power to the people.
Okay.
The captain makes a decision when one of these cards is drawn about whether to, in this case, perform a skill check or take the other option at the bottom. So those are the 2 main purposes that the captain serves. Similarly, the Keeper of the Tome also has cards in the Mythos deck that they resolve.
Okay, cool. So obviously with 10 characters, you don't have to bring Keilani. Mm-hmm. There is a list on the back of that card as well, telling you who's captain and the
Yes.
order of priority there.
If nobody happens to be playing Keilani, then thematically she's off screen, maybe she's injured, maybe she's sick, maybe she got swept overboard, we don't really know.
Right.
But whoever is highest in that priority then becomes the captain.
Makes sense.
You had mentioned that having a second mutiny would not look good on Keilani's resume. So I wanted to
No.
introduce something that is new in Unfathomable that I'm really excited about, and that is the character-specific crisis card.
Okay.
So as we can see here, history repeats is
I
Keilani's
called that
card.
one.
Yes.
I did.
Yeah. So when a card like this is drawn, if Keilani is in the game, she is the one who must resolve this card. So she gets to choose whether she's going to try to fight against this new mutiny or whether she's just going to give into it and give up the captain title, which
Okay.
is a very difficult decision. I've had this card come up like first turn on me as Keilani, and it's like, oh, I really don't want to give this title up. I don't know who the traitors are yet. I know I'm good.
Right.
But if I give you the captain title, maybe you're no good.
Right.
So,
I mean,
gotta keep that.
the shifty eyes. I'm definitely no good. Okay. So it can happen
Yeah.
again,
Yes.
and even on turn one. I'm sorry. Cool. And there was one other card that you talked to me about that I really wanted to talk about. Was
So
it a
that's
card?
it's a mini
Oh,
card.
it's a mini card. Okay,
This,
so let's bust
this
these
is
open.
not all of the cards.
Oh,
There-
of course
There are
not.
so many cards in this game.
We've taken away some punch.
Yes.
Let's give them bonus cards.
Yes.
All right,
Cards is
so
all,
let's.
what it's all about. So I actually want to talk about two of the item cards, which are something that if you're a fan of any of our Arkham games, you know all about items. They're cool things that you can collect over the gameplay. Do you have Keilani's sheet
Yeah.
still handy?
Yeah.
Let's take a look at the back of that sheet real quick on the,
Okay,
on the
back of the
thing there.
sheet. A little bit about Keilani's story.
So in the lower left, Keilani has a starting space. That's where she's going to begin the game, but also a starting item. And so her starting item here is the speaking trumpet.
Okay.
The speaking trumpet, it gives her an action that lets her rescue passengers without spending. I'm sorry, this has gone through multiple iterations, but lets her rescue many passengers with a single action.
Okay.
And so we haven't really talked about passengers, but they're a set of these tokens on the board. And over the course of the game, they're going to pop up on the deck. And so making sure that those passengers are safe is very important to keeping your resources intact.
Got it. And these are passengers that aren't players. These are just other passengers on the ship.
These are your background characters,
Yeah,
your
yeah.
extras.
Okay.
If you imagine this as being a television show.
All right.
The other character I say character because she's something of a character.
Yeah.
But another item in the item deck
Oh.
is our good friend, the dog Starbuck.
Man's best friend, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So Starbuck has a couple abilities on her. One is she can attack deep ones in your space without spending one of your precious actions. So on your turn, you only get to do 2 actions. Starbuck gives you a free action after her attack, so lets you do an attack for free. Starbuck is also a faithful companion, so if she sees that you are in danger of being injured, sent to sickbay, she can jump in the way and protect you.
Ah.
But unfortunately, that would make Starbuck go away.
Okay. So no.
Yeah.
No, that doesn't happen if Starbuck is mine. So, Starbuck allows you to attack deep ones. Can Starbuck be controlled by a hybrid?
Yes, by
Okay.
a hybrid. Yep.
Okay. Interesting. All right. So, as far as I'm concerned, and I'm looking at all of you in that main camera. I hope I'm on the main camera, otherwise this is really awkward. Do not sacrifice the dog. Don't do it. You take care of your furry friend. Unless you have to win the game. Do whatever you gotta do.
And while we're talking about cards that characters start with, we should talk about feat cards. So here we have Keilani's feat card.
Okay.
Feat cards are very powerful abilities that you can use, but you can only use them once per game. So Keilani's ability as an unconventional leader lets her think outside the box. Whenever she has to make a decision on a mythos card, she can instead say, I don't like any of these options. I'm going to choose option C. I'm just going to lose some resources instead.
Okay. Thinks outside of the box, but only after we open the box.
Yeah. Well, you can't play the game if it's in the box.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Good point. Good point. All right. I like. So, we've talked about characters. We've got some item cards. We've got some starting cards. We've got some roles that people fill with the captain and the keeper of the tome, and our box is empty. But I feel like something's missing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they're not going to be there. That side's too small.
They're hidden in the deep.
Hidden in the deep. Oh my gosh. Oh no. I mean, it's kind of water. There's some water on there. That was a missed opportunity. They should have all been water, and they should have been under it. I'll talk to the graphic design team, even though I have nothing to do with that. So, we've got some minis. We've got some deep ones. Some creepy green, which the green is good because I won't have to paint them and I won't feel bad about it. Because as I've discussed before, my painting skills are far from stellar. So we've got some little deep ones. These, you did mention that they, throughout the game, can be attacked.
So the deep ones are going to be clambering aboard the ship to try to damage it and sink it.
Okay.
So you're going to have to deal with all these deep ones swarming the ship in order to make sure that the ship stays safe and well enough intact that it can reach its destination.
Got it. So then as the traitor, which, as I said, shifty eyes, I'm clearly the traitor, or the hybrid, I would potentially ignore these because I have a much more important task that I have to complete.
Yep.
And I would convince everybody thoroughly that my other task is more important.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm a good liar. I think I'm gonna do well with this game. And I would tell you to check with people if I'm a good liar, but they don't know because they've never caught me in the lie. All right, so these are cool, but these are little. These are just the little ones that are gonna climb
babies,
aboard. They're the babies.
The minnows.
So we've also got the mother and the father. Would you like to introduce us to the mother?
This is the father.
The father. That's what I said.
Yeah,
In my
of course. Yeah.
liar.
So this here is Father Dagon. So he and Mother Hydra are so large that they can't go aboard the ship. So they're just going to be attacking it from the water around the
Okay.
boat.
Oh, yeah, the additional spaces outside the boat. Yep.
Now, each of them serves a slightly different purpose. So Dagon's ability, when he activates, is he's going to throw more deep ones up onto the ship. He's lifting them up out of the water and setting them on the deck so that they can go do their dirty work.
Okay. So
Mother Hydra, on the other hand, she's more about brute force.
clearly.
Yes, you wouldn't like her when she's angry because she damages the ship directly. So she's going to damage the closest space to her on the ship. So if you're in the space that's closest to her, you better watch out because if your space gets damaged, you are injured and you go to sick bay.
Just one hit.
Yep.
Okay.
There's no health in this game. There is sanity, but it's collective sanity. It's the will of all of the crew to keep fighting and to think that the situation is not hopeless.
Okay. That makes sense. And, I mean, unless I've missed something, which I have not, we've done an unboxing.
Do we have a die?
Do we have a die? Oh, yeah, the die is in the bag, too. We do have a die. Hey.
Just one die.
Just
one die is all you need.
Okay. And I'm assuming that die is going to be for checks and things.
That die has many purposes. It's used for combat. It's used for determining random spaces on the board. As you can see, if we're looking at the board here, there are numbered spaces on all over the board. So if you have to damage a space or risk a passenger is
Okay.
one of the mechanics in the game. That's how they come out into the game, is you roll a die, and that's going to determine which deck space they show up in.
Okay.
So those are the primary purposes. There's also on Mythos cards, there are many instances where you can choose bad option A, which, for instance, you know you're going to lose 2 food, or you can choose bad option B, which maybe you only lose 1 food, but you have to roll a die and can potentially lose maybe some fuel as well, or some sanity.
Okay.
So one of the important elements of designing this game was to make sure that there's never an obvious right answer.
Right.
And because that means it makes it much harder for the hidden traitors to do their sabotaging without being recognized as traitors.
Right.
So almost every decision in the game has some element of uncertainty to it. And so you never know for sure what the right answer is.
Cool. I like that. All right. Now, is there anything else that I missed?
Not that I can think of.
Okay. Cool. Because we've got some questions. And we've got some comments. And, all of those things. So I'm going to bust out my list of questions.
Before you do that, can you give an overview of all the minis again, what they all are?
Oh, yeah. Overview of minis. So, deep ones. There are, how many of these? There are a lot. A lot of deep ones. We'll just pull in the handful. Deep ones are on the ship, attacking the ship, right?
Yes.
So they're doing damage to people, or the ship. People can do damage to them.
They also can attack people.
Okay.
So they have a priority order. The first thing they want to do is they want to attack any person, any character who's in their space.
Okay.
If there are none of those, they'll try to defeat any passengers that are in the space. So you don't want to leave your passengers alone with the deep ones.
Yep.
Then, if they can, they'll try to damage their space. Failing all of that, they're going to move further into the ship.
Okay. Cool. So those are the deep ones. Now, we've got Father
Dagon.
Dagon. I always get the Hydra and Dagon mixed up. So Father Dagon is like, hey, deep ones, look at this. And he just whoop, pops them onto the ship.
Yep.
Takes that hand and he's just tossing them.
Yep.
Adding more threat and frightening minis to the board. And then Mother Hydra is punching things. Right? She wants to break it off.
Just smack that ship.
Okay. So I'm turning it around now. But we are also going to be doing Miniature Mondays for these. So you will be able to go to our social media platforms, which are all down in the description below, and be able to see the full 3D turnarounds of all of these on, well, clearly Mondays. So watch out for those. Cool. So we've done an unboxing. We've got some questions, but before we get to the questions, I want to talk about something that, is not really an elephant in the room. They're fairly small, but something we've been getting a lot of comments on previous videos and streams, the fact that we're wearing masks. So Tony, got a question for you. When is the last time we saw each other, other than last Tuesday when we just happened to be in the building at the same time?
Yep. Probably like March of 2020 would be my guess.
Yep, over a year. So there are a lot of comments about us wearing masks when we work together and we see each other every day. And I want to let people know that we are wearing masks for a few different reasons. One of them is that we aren't all working in the same space. Most of us are still working from home. Some of us will remain working from home for quite some time. So we don't see each other often. And therefore, masks are, a precaution that we're taking. And company-wide, we also have rules and restrictions in place, and we have to wear them when we're in this building. So we're both fully vaccinated, but despite that, there still is a company rule that we need to wear the masks. So I know it makes it harder for people to hear us. I know it doesn't help with understanding some of the things that we're trying to say, especially when, the name of the game is Unfathomable, and it's a big word.
Yes.
I'd say it even faster, just Unfathomable, right? So we get that. We apologize for it, but we got to follow the rules that are set in place for us. So we are going to continue to wear the masks as long as we are required, and I'm done with that. So, as many of you saw, we did post on social media yesterday asking for questions. So we've got a few of those, and we're going to cover them. I'm going to be looking at some paper now. Sorry, I'm not looking at you. I won't be looking at you as much, but a lot of different people asked this first question. So I'm not going to tell you who it was, but why did we pick the Arkham Horror Files for this game?
There were a number of reasons, and I have seen a lot of people online suggesting that maybe some other IPs, even within the company that we make, Runebound, for instance, or
Okay.
Twilight Imperium, would be also fitting settings for this game. But when it came down to it, I think the reason that we settled on the Arkham Files IP is just the atmosphere that is ever present in all of the Arkham games. The feeling of uncertainty, of terror, of not knowing who you can trust and who is a villain or what's hiding in the shadows. I think that atmosphere most closely captures the feeling that we wanted the game to capture. Similarly, I think that the theme of Arkham is a little bit more easier to grasp for players who maybe are not even familiar with the universe. Knowing that you are playing the role of a person, a human being living maybe 100 years ago, but they're still human beings, they're still just like you or me, is a much easier idea to grasp onto than trying to explain to somebody that, oh, we're these race of lion people from a distant galaxy, and there are these other people who have infiltrated. It's a little bit harder to get into, and so I think the making that historical aspect of it makes it easier to latch on for fans. That said, there is a little bit of baggage that comes with using the Arkham horror universe. The source material that Unfathomable is based on, The Shadow over Innsmouth, has kind of an undercurrent through the storyline that is people interacting with people who are different from you or from different parts of the world is dangerous. It's something to be feared, and is going to bring horror and terror to your town. And that's kind of a xenophobic and racist message that we don't think belongs anywhere in our society, and we don't want to represent that in our game. The way that we've approached the background of the Deep Ones for this game, for the Deep One hybrids specifically, is instead of postulating that they are the result of interbreeding between humans and Deep Ones, they're more a result of the supernatural, of occult behaviors and practices of, say, the Esoteric Order of Dagon, who are a cult organization who's all about worshiping Father Dagon and Mother Hydra. And so each of our characters in the game doesn't necessarily have a connection to the Order itself. One of them does, but all of them have something in their background where they've either encountered members of the Order or of other cultist groups or of Deep Ones themselves that all lend the idea that this person might feasibly turn out to be a hybrid between a Deep One and a human.
Okay, great. That's awesome. And thank you for asking the question, everyone. We've got a few more questions. This one is from The Reek. So I actually mentioned this earlier. How's the replayability of Unfathomable? And is it only one scenario?
So unlike, I was thinking about this morning, I think unlike maybe any other Arkham game we've done, this is not a scenario-based game.
Right.
This is what we in the design biz term an emergent narrative game. So the story that is being told here, even though the skeletal structure of it is always the same, you're always on the ship, you're always traveling to Boston, and you're trying to get there in one piece, the way that story plays out is completely different based on the characters that you're playing, the mythos events that come up. Who turns out to be the traitor, as I mentioned earlier, has a huge impact on the story of the game.
Right. So, one scenario, if you will, but many different possibilities every time you play. Cool. And I didn't mention this before. I apologize for not mentioning it. But we do have a good number of questions here. We're going to try to get through them. If we have additional time, we will take questions from the YouTube chat. So if you do have any questions, please throw them our way. If we have time, we'll get to them. All right. So this one is Iceberg But Sand sent in. Will we ever see the Unfathomable characters in other games?
That is a good question. So I don't think we've mentioned on the stream, but in the announcement article, we stated that this game is actually set more than a decade prior to any other Arkham Files game that we've done. And so the characters in this game are all brand new characters who have never been seen in any other Arkham game. Will they show up in other Arkham games? I actually don't know the question or the answer to that. I think that'll largely depend. They would have to be older at the time because they're going to be a decade older.
Yep.
I don't know if we would actually do that because one of the things about around this game is that we haven't established what the canonical outcome of the journey is.
Right.
We don't know if this ship actually reached its destination from the in-universe perspective.
Yeah.
And so I kind of like the idea of not knowing. It's kind of like this ship disappeared into the Bermuda Triangle, although we're in a different part of the Atlantic than that, but nobody knows where it went. And so whether they show up in other games, I think is to be seen at this point.
Okay, cool. All right, and then Mattman7306 says, how does Unfathomable differentiate itself from similar games in the genre, such as Battlestar Galactica?
I think there are two different questions here. One is how is it different from BSG, and the other is how is it different from other games in the genre. And by genre, I'm going to assume that the question asker means hidden traitor games. Yep. So that first question, how it's different from BSG, there are a lot of ways that it differs. The way that the monsters behave, all the character abilities are different. There are many similarities as well, and I think a lot of these are going to kind of come to light as we talk more about the game and as we show gameplay happening. But to answer the other question, how it's different from other hidden traitor games, most hidden traitor games these days, at least that I've played, are shorter affairs. They're like an hour or less, like your Resistance, games like that. Where it's a very short, it's a very compact experience. It can be very exciting. I enjoy many of these games, but there's something about Unfathomable and its predecessor that you only get from a longer traitor game, and that is you have time to build trust. Right. You have time to convince people that you're on their side, that you're being good, that you're only looking out for the best outcome for the ship, only to turn the knife at the key moment. And that, I think, creates experiences that you can't get in shorter games.
Right, and potentially lost friendships.
I hope there's no lost friendships, but you never know.
You're right. I don't know, my gaming groups, we get pretty serious.
Cutthroat.
Cool. So, next question is, again, from multiple different people. Why is it a minimum of 3 players?
This goes to the previous question in that this is a hidden traitor game. It is all about the deduction, the treachery, the intrigue, not knowing who's on your side and who is not. If you and I were just playing a game together and I draw, you're not a traitor.
Guess what you know?
Yeah, logic dictates that Josh over here is the traitor. I am. So the experience that we wanted necessitated a minimum of 3 players. And so because I was developing this during the pandemic, the thought definitely did cross my mind. Is there a way that we could play this with fewer players or even solo? I won't discount that as being a possibility in the future, but the core experience we wanted in the game was the hidden traitor aspect, and that just required at least 3 players.
Okay. So I'm going to tie into that question with a question from the chat. Let me make sure that I get this question from the chat right. Okay, so we've been talking about the hybrids, the traitors. Is there a hybrid? Can there be multiple hybrid in a game?
The number of traitor characters in the game is going to depend on the number of players in the game. So in a 3-player game, you're just going to have one hybrid. In a 4, 5, and 6-player game, you're going to have more than one. I think one of our questions later asks how we balance at the various player counts.
Yep.
And the way we do that is through the cultist, which is our third type of traitor card. So the cultist is used in 4 and 6-player games along with hybrids. And the cultist works basically the same as a hybrid, but the cultist is thematically a full-blooded human. They don't have the hybrid ability to breathe underwater.
Okay.
So if the ship goes down before they get near land, that's bad news for them. So basically, the cultist has a different win condition where the ship has to be within sight of land for them to, and then go down, not reach its destination, for them to win the game. And so it creates a different approach to the game because you've got one foot in both camps. You have to make sure the ship survives long enough, but you can't let it be going too well or they're going to get to land and you're going to be found out. So you got to really play a very careful game balancing act between sabotage and helping the ship go forward. It's a little bit harder to win as the cultist. And in fact, we recommend that when you're playing your first game, even if you're playing at 4 and 6, you play without the cultist because you're going to have a hard enough time winning even without the extra traitor in there. But I find when I have played as the cultist, it creates a very interesting puzzle to try to figure out.
Yeah. Interesting. So, just to clarify, if the cultist wins, the hybrid wins because the ship has gone down.
Yes, the cultist wins along with the hybrids.
Right. But the hybrid can win while the cultist loses if the ship goes down too soon. Interesting. Okay. I like. All right, and this next one, I'm going to mess up the name. So, at something Hendry. Is there only one hybrid in each game or more? We just kind of discussed that. Can there be more than one hybrid, though?
There can be more than one hybrid. Okay. So, yeah. In a 5-player game, there are 2. In a 6-player game, there are 2 plus the cultist.
Okay.
I think the question also asked, do they know who each other is?
Yes.
And the answer to that is no. They don't know. They have to figure out who their allies are just like everybody else does. One thing that I don't think people might know about this game if they have no experience with BSG is that you don't just get your loyalty at the start of the game. You get one loyalty card at the start of the game. So you may be a traitor out of the gate. Or there may be no traitors out of the gate. It may be that when the game reaches its midpoint, every player is dealt another loyalty card. And so it may be at that point that you become a traitor. Or you might have been a traitor all along and you get an ally when that halfway point is reached.
So, early game, let's pretend nobody's a traitor. Somebody's going to think that somebody's a traitor and trying to do negative things, but you're going to be trying to help the ship.
You can't count on there not being a traitor in that first half, or you're going to be in some trouble. Right.
So you potentially are playing half the game doing everything in your power to save the ship, and then realize through whatever this ritual was that, oh, shoot, I am a hybrid. Now I got to undo everything that I did. Interesting. That's cool.
Layers on layers.
That's cool. I like that. But you can't go from being a hybrid to a human. That's not possible.
No. Once you become a hybrid, you are a hybrid.
Okay. Good. Cool. All right. And then from Not Jordan Carl, how long is the playtime? I know you said it's longer than the hour that some of the other hidden identity games are.
It runs 2 to 4 hours. And my experience from my playtesters is that most games end up in that time frame. You might get longer games early on as you're all figuring out how the game works and things like that. But I think experienced groups are going to get that 2 to 4 hour range. the player so the game length is roughly the same at all player counts because you do the same number of turns regardless of the number of players, roughly.
Okay.
And so adding more players doesn't add more game time in terms of rounds, but it might add more game time in terms of discussion and accusations
Right,
and all this
right.
other kind of fun table talk that you get going.
Nice. All right, and this next question, I didn't quite understand it, but I wanted to add it just to see if you had an answer. So this was from Nico, and the question is,
Yes.
okay,
Yep.
cool. I'm glad that you figured that one out, because I couldn't. So we kind of touched on this a little bit, but just in case you have anything else, at Tucky M33 asked if it would be balanced for both sides. No, we've talked about it a little bit already.
Yeah, so balancing a game like this is tricky because if you make it too easy for the humans to win or for brand new players to win as humans, then once you become familiar with the game, you're going to almost always have the humans winning.
Right.
So I leaned slightly more in favor of the traitors winning because I think as players get more used to the game, they're going to develop strategies that are going to be more effective and they're going to get that human win rate up. It's also harder to play as a traitor. It takes more nuance, more subtlety, more experience to figure out the best way to do that without being caught. And so that's another reason that it tilts maybe slightly towards the traitors. That said, there are rules included in the rulebook where if you're finding it just too hard for the humans to win or too easy for the humans to win, you can adjust your difficulty by changing the starting resource values in the game.
I didn't know that was a thing, so that's exciting. All right, and this one? I got this one. I can answer this one. This was, again, something asked by multiple people. When does the game come out? And according to our article, which went up, was that just last week? Wow, that was just last week. It's been a long week. According to that article, it is coming out in September. So it will be out in, holy Hannah, it's already June? Just a few months now. I don't know where 2021 is going, but that's beside the point. So September, that's when the game's coming out. All right, and now we've got a question from SkateJoe88. So this is, again, talking about balance, which you've already mentioned, but just in case there's anything extra here. How do you balance a game like this? Monsters, characters, tests. How do you draw a line between being too easy for experienced players and that won't stick to it, or too difficult for new players, which you just kind of touched on. Yeah. So you can make it easier by looking at the book, or more difficult by looking at the book.
Yep, adding or reducing resources at the start is basically the difficulty level mechanism that we have.
Cool. And I should have read through that question before starting to say it out loud. Then I could have just skipped it. My bad. So this is another thing we kind of talked about, but I know that there's more we can discuss with it. So this is from Kelvin Wong. Unfathomable changes time period with the Arkham Files setting, which we've already discussed. What opportunities did you take in order to move Arkham Files in a better direction regarding inclusivity, albinism, mental illness, and depart from the racist history of Lovecraft, which I know you've touched on, but I know there's more.
I do want to call out something else that I'm very excited about in this game, and that is the diversity of the characters who are included in it. When I set out to design the characters for this game, a brand new cast, I wanted to capture as many walks of life as I could. There are 5 people of color out of the 10 characters in this game. There are 5 women. There's I think our first gender non-binary character in any of our games makes an appearance in this game. We have a deaf character. We have a character with albinism. So we have a Muslim woman. We have a Native American. We have all of these people from different walks, and I'm very excited to have everybody meet these new characters and try them out. And my hope is that everybody who plays this game will find at least one character that they can relate to and that they can associate with.
Cool. Great. And then for me, I'll just play all of them because I'm sure they all have amazing abilities that I want to use at some point.
Yes, they are all very fun.
Yes. Cool. This one is from Camelisk. Is there more incentive to try to stay hidden longer as the traitor?
Yes. So I know there are differing opinions on this for Battlestar Galactica, but for Unfathomable, I definitely wanted to highly incentivize traitors to remain hidden, because that's where the most fun in the game is, because you figuring out who's on your team and trying to operate under the radar is much more fun than being out and out head-to-head combat, which a lot of other games do really well, and so it's not really the focus of this game. And so I've tried to incentivize players to try to remain hidden for as long as they can. There are pros and cons to whether you decide to reveal yourself as a traitor versus remaining hidden. Some of the pros of revealing yourself as a traitor is you can then start to actively attack the other players, which you cannot do while you're hidden. You can also draw treachery cards, which is a different type of skill deck that only revealed traitors have access to, and you can use those. Give you special abilities to kind of control the deep ones in a way. But there are also drawbacks to being a revealed traitor. You can only put one card into each skill check, and we haven't really talked about skill checks on this stream, but basically you have less ability to make the crises fail when you are a revealed traitor than when you are playing as a hidden character. You also are easier to capture because the human players can attack you back and send you to the brig, which is very restrictive on what you can do as a traitor. You also don't draw a mythos card during your turn, so there are fewer bad things happening to the players. Basically, your turn is the bad thing. You don't get to do a bad thing on top of that.
Okay.
And so I found that through all of our testing, it sounded like my play testers felt that there was a much greater incentive to remain a hidden traitor in this game than in its predecessor.
Okay, cool. So we'll get through a couple more questions. We're getting a little bit low on time, so we'll grab a couple more of these really quick. So one of the questions was from Daznak. Is there an equivalent of the old executive order card to skip your turn?
Yep.
Yeah?
Yeah, that goes into the building of trust. I wanted to build in reasons that you would need to trust your other players, and an equivalent of that old ability, which is basically you give your turn, or in this case, one of your actions to another player so that they can do whatever they like. So I better trust you if I'm going to give you half of my turn to do the thing that you said you were going to do.
Right. Okay. And then there are a few questions that talk more about mechanics and things like that. We'll probably just have to wait until we do a gameplay so that everybody can see those mechanics in action. So we'll bounce past a couple of those. There is one here I did want to... I'm not going to get the name, sorry. But if the IP was a turnoff for someone that didn't want to play the other version, what would draw them into this game? Can we just say the IP?
I would say the IP.
Oh, yeah.
And there have been some gameplay changes. So I think just check out one of our live streams of gameplay and see if it appeals to you.
Okay, cool. And the rest of these questions I wanted to cover because they were fun, but we don't have time. They're not really game related, so we will have to skip them this time. But I do appreciate all of the questions that were asked, whether they were game related or not. So thank you to everybody who did submit any questions. I'm just going to confirm. Okay, cool. We're good on questions. So, Tony, thank you for coming. Thank you for joining me today. This is really cool. Like I said, I didn't get to play test this one, so I'm super excited to be able to play it, and more excited after hearing you talk about it today. So I appreciate that. Hopefully some of you gleaned some new and exciting information. And, maybe at some point you come over, towards the FFG offices and come play a game with me, right? Huh? I think it would be fun.
Yeah.
other than that, we've got a lot of stuff still coming out for Unfathomable. Some of you may have already seen some of our social media content. We've got more coming up soon. Like I said, we're going to have the Miniature Mondays starting up in the near future for our minis here. Starting next week, we're going to start putting out our mobile wallpapers, which I've had the Descent one on my phone for a while now. I'm excited for something new and different. Not that I'm excited to get rid of Descent, but I'm excited to add something new to my phone. And then, yeah, we're going to have a really fun video that we just recorded. We're putting it together now at the beginning of next month. And then, like I said, in about a month from now, so middle of July, we're going to have our character article coming up. So that's it for Unfathomable stuff. Join us again next week, where we will be doing our first playthrough for Descent. And I know I'm pretty excited for that one too. It'll be good. I mean, Nathan and Carr are fine, but I think we've got something magical going on here, Tony. But yeah, thank you to everybody else who joined us as well. Please feel free to click that thumbs up button if you liked it. Make sure you smash that subscribe button, hit that little bell so you get notified when we do go live, like I said, next week. And if you want to follow us on any of our other social medias, I'm going to point down, even though it's not under the table, go to the description below. And again, thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.